Thank you so much, Lexi, for joining us.
Of course.
So you've been very outspoken about the issue of the upcoming election and, of course, about the Democrats' treatment of Palestinians, Biden's policies, Kamala Harris's statements. What is your overall view of 2024 and what should be done?
Well, number one is that I don't think anybody in any situation ever should vote for genocide, not just for Palestinians, but for themselves. Like, I feel myself often like I'm talking to first graders. I mean, I grew up in Germany where Holocaust education is very big. Not sure if it done anything, based on how the Germans are acting, but you do have mandatory trips to the death camps, and you are basically brought up year after year again to really kind of internalize never again. And so I find myself constantly shocked. But I think to watch Americans eagerly, not just quietly, but eagerly, what I consider to be a vote for Adolf Hitler in 1942. If there had been social media and everybody could have watched it every day. I never really believed the German lie that they didn't know. But there was also no social media. We have all been watching, this genocide. And some people say, well, not everybody's on Twitter, not everybody's on Instagram. I get different news channels. I get the BBC, I get, French news. I like to see what comes up in this collection of feed every day of what they're presenting to me. And you cannot actually escape the fact that there's a genocide going on. This is not a secret. It's not a secret that it's a massive David against Goliath kind of situation, right? So I think even people that I know that tune out for mental health reasons can't escape it. So everybody knows. And the fact that everybody knows and is ready to go vote for the people who are doing it is, to me, shocking, to be honest. And I really, question the level of education in this country. If it's, if people can really be so ignorant and believe that, oh, well, this is on the other side of the world, and obviously America can't control everything. Like, I think you would have to be incredibly ignorant to believe that. And I also don't think that's the case. So I find myself constantly shocked. And the fact that, talking about this Clinton speech yesterday, the fact that Democrats are so masked off about it is, it's mysterious. Like, there's a lot of talk about it, but even in Palestinian chat rooms, we ask ourselves, what is actually going on? Either this election will come out, like a landslide for the Democrats, and we were really wrong about everything, like, about how people feel about Arabs, about Palestinians, about genocide, which I have to say, many dark days would be ahead if that's the case, or they will lose, in which case I'm not sure what the strategy was here.
And what do you have to say to people who, obviously, you've heard this, make the lesser evil argument? They say, yes, there's a genocide happening now. I'm not talking about people who are in denial about the genocide. I'm talking about people who say, yeah, there's a genocide happening now. Harris is, it's shameful what she said. Biden has enabled genocide, but they argue Trump will be worse.
I think until 3-4 months ago, that was, I thought it was always wrong to say that, because again, it's also about, can you actually give your vote to somebody committing genocide? The truth is, let's say Trump is worse for all of us. The truth is, we should make that sacrifice and go and do a worse, because the act of voting for somebody who is committing genocide will bring about so much worse. And I'm not talking just about us. I'm talking about the next generation and the generation after that. Again, I'm trying to explain to people, this is like voting for Adolf Hitler in 1942. I think it's a much bigger question. It's less about and it's very hard as a Palestinian to argue this point because people think I'm trying to save my people, which is true. I am. But even if I wasn't Palestinian, I would argue about the fact that we should all know by now that you cannot vote for Adolf Hitler in 1942. You just can't. What are you doing for yourself even? We just had this pandemic and people complained how the government was careless about sending people out too quickly once they started to see the economy down. So it doesn't always hit brown and black people. It can hit white people, and you just basically, what you're doing is you're enabling a monster. That's what you're saying. You're saying that we have watched you for 1 year supply the bombs to kill hundreds and thousands of people and lie and veto ceasefire 4 times and supply more bombs and have no empathy for, Palestinians. And we have watched our government, many have resigned. We rarely talk about that. There's at least 24 people that have resigned, that we know about. We ignore that. So we are now all going to the voting booth and rewarding this behavior. This grows a monster. I mean, it's the thing I'm in shock about is how is that not obvious? How is that not obvious that we can't do that? And again, that is assuming that Trump is worse. We should all say, well, shit, now we have to deal with the 3-headed devil because we cannot reward genocide. Because with that action, that will not only empower the Democrats, it will empower the Republicans as well. It will change the world completely. I mean, I am mortified that the Democrats win. I'm not even thinking about Trump and what happens if they win. I'm certainly not thinking about Muslim bans. I don't know if people don't realize every Muslim would love to leave this country. It doesn't even matter if they don't know where they're going, just for the killing to stop. Like literally, we would all pack our bags. Everybody would leave and say, okay, if the deal is that we get deported to the moon and the killing stops, we go. That's how everybody feels. We just want it to stop. So this is not something you can threaten Arabs and Muslims with. But even the slightly more sophisticated, well, this is the only one we can push left or anything of that is just ludicrous to me. And it doesn't strike me as an argument that adult people with a basic education should make. So I really sometimes wonder if Americans don't hear themselves.
I guess the problem is, just to try to put forward the counter argument, not that it's something I believe in, because I think it's a really tough issue. And I can't tell someone, that they should not punish genocide. I mean, it's just, everything you're saying makes sense to me. But I want to put forward the counter argument in fairness, which is that, if you vote to punish Democrats for the genocide, you're not only risking bringing in Trump, who could possibly be worse. It's hard to imagine, but it's possible. Like Trump could endorse an even more aggressive Israeli assault on the West Bank, for example, than Biden's already done. But again, Biden's already endorsed a really aggressive assault on the West Bank. In fact,
I mean, I know you know this. I know you're trying to do a counter argument, but I categorically, and we all reject the idea that it could be worse. Gaza is flattened. Babies have been headless for 3 months. Bulldozers have run over bodies. What is worse? Worse, like if somebody says, well, Trump will flatten Gaza, somebody actually needs to flatten it. If it ever needs to be rebuilt for whomever, it needs to be flattened. Like, this is not a threat. There's no worse. And also, when in history did we ever say, like, oh, there could be a worse genocide? Genocide is genocide. You don't say, well, this guy could be slightly worse. Like, no, it's either genocide or not. And again, it goes back to, it doesn't even matter if it's the Democrats or the Republicans right now. It's the point that whoever is committing genocide cannot be rewarded, because it's not about the actual party. It's about the act of us as a nation deciding you committed genocide, but we'll vote for you anyway. Massive mistake. I mean, this is what I really would like people to understand. This is a massive mistake, not just for Palestinians, because again, when you talk to Palestinians, especially on the ground, they don't give a shit. They hate Americans. They hate the entire West, other than Ireland and Spain, maybe. But they think everybody is, even those are just performative, really. They do not give a shit about our election. For them, it is what it is. Nobody's making it any better. And I think there's part of in the really academic intellectual circles in Palestine where they feel, let them continue to behave like that, because eventually they will all turn on themselves. As you know, this kind of stuff, as we should have learned from the Germans, eventually you find yourself in ashes, and so that threat of it could be worse. I don't, not for the Palestinians, maybe for Americans, maybe he will put another 2 crazy people on the Supreme Court. That I can see.
Well, that's the argument, right? That's the argument, that you're not just punishing, if you vote, if you don't vote for Democrats, you aren't just punishing Democrats, but you're punishing the most marginalized people in the US who will suffer more likely under Trump than they would under Democrats, because I think it is, people might disagree with this, but generally Democrats have slightly better policies for the most marginalized people than Republicans do, who just serve the ultra rich to the extreme, whereas Democrats serve the ultra rich to a lesser extreme. That's the argument there, is you aren't just is it privileged people who vote against Kamala Harris aren't just punishing the Democrats, they're also punishing people who actually suffer the policies much more harshly of people like Trump.
Yeah. If you really look, though, you don't see a lot of it doesn't matter what group you look at, whether it's Latinos or Black Americans, you find within that group people who will vote for Harris, but you actually, the ones who are loudest saying absolutely not, are really the most marginalized, I haven't seen a disabled person who's willing to vote for Harris. I think they get it the most, and so the trans community, there's a proportion who thinks Harris will, do better for them. But the largest part is very clear, oh shit, if that happens to them, this could happen to us. Again, because with somebody committing genocide, you don't know who they turn on next. And you also, again, I think people are seeing it too much as a party thing, whereas I see it as an overall issue, I think these parties are very similar. Obviously, everybody in the world kind of thinks that. And I think that's where Americans get really stuck on, I once made a movie about, hooligan firms in the UK. And, the way people behave about the GOP and the Democrats very much reminds me of these, the kind of firms that would never, no matter how much you could pay them millions, and they wouldn't switch firms or teams, and so it strikes me as, very culty, very unreasonable, because if you look at them from the outside, as I do, I vote here, but I also grew up in Europe and I'm Palestinian. So I look at it from the outside and I think this is, for the fact that they're not very different, even in its MAGA version, the kind of hatred they have, where they really just want to fucking go at each other's throat is super irrational. Because, to the rest of the world, you still want to deal with, I think, that the 3rd richest nation who still doesn't have free colleges and free healthcare and everything else everybody has. Everybody in the world always looks at you guys and think, the fuck are they doing, So there's a lot of they do this and they do this. To the rest of the world, it looks very much the same. And I also have to tell you, when you saw these Michigan Muslims, there's a lot of rumors about why they supported Trump. But I can tell you that, I'm, there's a big part of my family I argue with about, because I'm a loud feminist, which in Palestinian culture, sometimes you're not that's not the most welcome. You have to, in every culture, it's not the most welcome in German or in American either. But what I'm saying is that I don't ever hide what I feel about feminism or gay rights. I am that out there, and I will fight everybody in my family. It doesn't matter where they culturally are. And so when I hear this talk about, these Muslims got behind Trump because they hate gays or something, no, this this is not true. Like, I can tell you that even the gay members in my Palestinian family, we're making this calculation, and on this calculation, what we have seen is behavior from the Democrats that is psychopathic. And like the way Biden behaved was definitely, when he was shown pictures and said, "Oh, I already saw these same pictures,"
Right,
and the
lying.
woman said, "No, he hasn't. These are brand new pictures." Like, that is psychotic white supremacist behavior out in the open. Now, we could say he had a very specific hatred for Palestinians that goes back to his buddy who was KKK, and there's a whole history about him about that. I understand that. But I then have, listened and watched to Harris. My hope was actually, given that she has a stepdaughter who's out there fundraising for Palestine, maybe there is hope, because believe it or not, I remember when Ivanka Trump made her father do something about the Syrian kids who were attacked with a chemical attack. And I thought, this is actually how dumb it would be. It would be a relative who pushes the idiot in charge in this country to make it stop. And there was hope that I thought maybe, but she has increasingly, like if she had thrown a shoe at every Arab in this country, it would have been the same. I'm not understanding the strategy. Like, you could have at least pretended. They didn't even make an attempt. Kicked out a Palestinian, constantly refused any engagement that even the Palestinians, Arab Americans asked for. Sent Richie Torres to Michigan. I mean, the list goes on and on.
And they just sent Bill Clinton. They just sent Bill Clinton to Michigan, where he basically called all Palestinians human shield. He justified Israel's mass murder, said, like, what would you do if you were Israeli? Because some Israelis who were attacked on October 7th wanted peace. So therefore, it's okay to commit genocide. Yeah. And then he said that Jews were in Palestine before Muslims, which is like, completely ahistorical.
Yeah. I mean, that was so bizarre, but it
like
was
all
just
the talking points, all the Hasbara talking points in one speech.
One speech. And it was kind of like we were all watching this, and it was almost like the tipping of the iceberg. Like, we've seen it from everybody. I mean, she gets heckled, and every time she opens her mouth, she gets heckled, right? She only has one light. I'm speaking. She tries it every time. But this last time, what did she say about Gaza? I am helping Gaza, and we get those hostages out. It is like handless, speech. There is part of that, and I can only tell you what happens in like Palestinian chat rooms as an example of like what. And usually, I would say probably all of us have different chat groups with families. And in a Palestinian family, you will usually find, multiple people, generations, and multiple professions. So I always find them a good, like, the pulse of something, right? Now, again, though, mine is all diaspora. So it's not, we're not on the ground, and they will feel differently. But in our family chat, it is, everybody kind of feels there is at this point, and this is a very rational, we understand who Trump is. We understand he uses Palestinians as a insult, right? We understand he moved the embassy. You don't ever have to tell Palestinians that we have paying attention. But we are all convinced, it doesn't matter who it is, we are all convinced that chances are he will stop the genocide sooner than the Democrats. Yeah. And you can tell, by the way, by the Israelis who are having that same concern. I've already seen the articles written about it. I've seen the interviews about it. I have a friend, a very lefty friend, I think one of the 3 lefties left in Israel, who, who says you can actually tell in Hebrew TV that there is that feeling. And I also feel like there's a lot of...
Well, that's interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's interesting because, people, the conventional belief here is that that Netanyahu wants Trump because he feels that Trump would allow him to go even more ballistic against Palestinians. That's wild. And there is, Netanyahu and Trump are close, and Netanyahu is close to Trump's biggest donors. So I do think there is some evidence for that. I'm surprised.
I don't think that is true, because they've already argued. The first thing Trump did in his first interview, you can actually see him always get corrected, and we are worried about that, because he will go on his first interview, which made big news, because he said, everybody started saying that he said they have to finish them. They have to finish them. Yeah. That is not what he said. He said they have to finish it. This is very bad PR. The images coming out is horrible. I don't know why these images are being released. They must get back to peace. The killing must stop. He said that twice. This upset Israelis very much, and this upset American Zionists. This is like the 10th time that he has said something actually anti-Zionism, because, let's be honest, that man is actually deep down inside, he is not pro-Jewish or pro-Zionism. He truly isn't. If you remember in the very beginning of his first campaign, he was booed in every Jewish organization, convention, and event. And then I remember this so clearly because, I was always obsessed with his hairstylist, who is Palestinian, and
wow. Did not know
and
that.
he's actually, he's more than a hairstylist, and he probably hates the fact because he hates the fact to be known as that because he makes always sure that people know he doesn't actually do Trump's hair. But he's one of those really successful Palestinians who came to America and then invented some kind of hair color that without the bad chemical in it. He's a billionaire now, right? But he was also on The Apprentice, and Trump brought him on The Apprentice because he's a billionaire hairstylist who invented color, blah, blah. So from the beginning, this man said, no, I think Trump will be good for Palestine. Now, this man doesn't say that because he's a fucking idiot. There is some proof for that. But what we have also seen that Trump is an absolute whore, like whoever pulls him back from that, he will go out and say something anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, true also, right? He will say that, and then he gets pulled back. And I remember so clearly during his first campaign how he spent a weekend with Adelson. And he was after that weekend, he was the most pro-Zionist. And unfortunately, when that idiot embraces something, he will embrace it fully, and that's when, embassies were moved and stuff. So I agree with you there. But the other part to that is that I do truly believe he can't stand these images. He said it more than enough, and he said it the first time. I remember when he fired Bolton, because Bolton said this guy always, and I 100% believe that Bolton kept wanting to have war.
Didn't he say like he never met a war he didn't like or something?
And he said that he kept pushing for war. And it's true, Bolton wanted war against Iran. And let's be honest, this is not a conspiracy. There is a thing about the US, and probably it is in many countries, but it is very, extreme in the US, where a certain group of people make a lot of money when the US goes to war. That's just a thing, and I don't think that will ever stop. War must be for a certain industry and a certain amount of people to make money. And we find ourselves here, and that Bolton guy just reminded me of a Dick Cheney, like pushing for war. And Trump fired him. There's been multiple articles about that. And I think it was even written in somebody's biography that, look, he hated that. And he also, and this is not an honorable and anti-war thing. I want to make that clear. Right. Trump is not honorable anti-war the way the three of us are anti-war, right? He doesn't like it. He doesn't like people in uniform. He doesn't get the fucking parades. That's why he keeps having these bloopers where he says shit that insults the US military. But he's not a military kind of guy. His father fucking or grandfather ran a whorehouse. That's what this family are. They are not military people. But that also means he doesn't get this kind of, he will put my reason for not voting for him is much more like the fact that he put an ad in the paper to get these young black men killed that were innocent. That to me is like, I can't stand the fucker. Yeah. I don't think that, for his foreign policy is not hawkish because he doesn't give a fuck. And he's also essentially, in his essence, a real America First guy. He would like to take this money and put it here. He would also like it if he could only put it for white Americans. I don't argue that. Yeah. But he's not, I truly think he can't understand, he doesn't like a war. Certainly not if he has to see it. And I tell you another thing. If he had been heckled the way she had been heckled, it would have stopped already. He can't stand it. He's too vain and too narcissistic for that. Mm. And the psychotic part of the Democrats, to me, this is what shocks me the most. And I'm not scared of a lot of things, but to me, this felt very much like we're dealing with zombies. How do you get heckled and shown images and just, these guys get these, this one woman who just went on the news who resigned, the latest one who resigned, who said, I'm the one who had to put the report together and show the images and show to Biden what images are coming out of the Middle East that are basically now shaping the opinion of the Middle East, of the US, and he just disregarded it. She was asked not to put those reports together. And I find that everything I learned about Nazis, I find that behavior much more Nazi-like than anything Trump does with his dumb shit that he says. Trump is a vulgar,
opportunist.
Kind of three-penny racist. He says dumb racist stuff that like people at the fucking pub say, whereas the idea that this group of people, Blinken and Biden, have had these their own employees come to them over and over, resigning we had an arms dealer resign. When have you ever heard that?
Josh
When
Paul,
have you heard that? All these people saying this is too much. And I've actually made a folder with a collection of everybody who resigned and everybody who written open letters. There was, people forget because so much has happened, but there was a group of NatCom Democrats, like hawkish Democrats that have gotten together and written a letter and said the Gaza policy must change. Forgotten, ignored. So to me, that behavior is strange, and it's now continuing with Harris. Harris could have made a choice and pretended. She could have at least
lied.
That's the thing, and she could have distanced herself from Joe Biden because Joe Biden was already replaced. Like they already were saying that Joe Biden was unfit to run, so therefore he's done anyway. So they could have broken from him and actually blamed him for the Gaza genocide. Said like, this wasn't me. Instead, Kamala Harris was very clear that there's no difference between her and Biden on this issue, and she wouldn't do anything differently. And what I find really unfortunate is people like Bernie Sanders and AOC. They could have used their platforms because obviously, like they want Kamala Harris to win, and fine, that's their right. They could have used their platforms to pressure Kamala Harris to break from Biden. Instead, they made excuses for Kamala Harris not doing that. AOC got up on stage at the DNC and lied and said that Kamala Harris is working tirelessly for a ceasefire. So they papered over Kamala Harris's refusal to break from Biden, and they could have used the platform they have to pressure actually to do the right thing. And it very well could cost them. We have to wrap soon. I want to ask you, Lexi, you work in film, and I'm just wondering for you what that experience has been like, and how you've been evaluating that industry, which is so beholden to Zionist interests ever since October 7th.
It's not great. It's very bad here. I basically quit and I'm moving to Ireland in 2 months. It's not sustainable. I'm too loud for it, and I also see, though, I'm obviously very outspoken, but there's a few Palestinians in the industry who have been quiet, which to me is worse, to be honest. Like how it's not like people don't know you're Palestinian, so they're looking at you and you're quiet. So it's not like they judge you differently. They still won't trust you. You're not even saying anything. So now you're suffering at home. Like I don't see them getting work or rewarded because they're quiet. So I figured I may as well. I mean, there's no way I could have been any different anyway. So, but it is a stronghold in Zionism. I would say tech is probably, it's kind of the same with tech and Hollywood have a really strong Zionism, the kind of the power, the WhatsApp groups, this is why we are a strong union town. We are striking union people. We have below the line Teamsters, and you see the entire nation's union from the post-union to I don't know, all the unions have come out for ceasefire, not our unions, and we have certainly tried. In each union, there is a group that has pushed for that. We have been shut down. So I think that, something is going to break that too, because it's not sustainable the way it's going. You basically, it's very hard to talk about because when you talk about this, it's hard to, especially for me, to circumvent the tropes, about who is in power, because, I don't ever,
It's okay. It's a safe space. We know you're not an anti-Semite.
No, but for me myself, this is a thing. Again, I grew up in Germany, and I am a huge opponent of anti-Semitism, and I also don't like these tropes. I've never felt Jews run the industry. I was recruited and pushed to go on the street to protest for Palestine, not by my family, but by leftist Jews that I met in Hollywood. They said, "What the fuck are you doing, Lexi? Aren't you going?" So I felt always very. But then there's this other side that really came out during the Sony hack. By the way, if we're wrapping, is your podcast? Is this the end of your podcast already?
Yes, we are coming to the end. Yes.
Yeah, but we'll have you on again. This is just
this is a special one where we're doing something about these fundraisers that are going on. It's very important. I have to get this message out, and you guys are the first people I'm doing a podcast with, right? So everybody is a little bit stunned about these fundraisers that you see all these Palestinians on begging, and if you know anything about Arab culture or Palestinian culture, it's the worst thing. Like, even when I go home, when I go visit, whether, it is Jordan or the last time I was in Al-Ghalil, they want to pay for me. They don't want, even though they know I make more money, so the culture, everybody knows our culture is very much, they want to give, they don't want to take. So
extremely
for us,
generous
even,
and hospitable.
it has been very weird to see people beg aggressively. So I have done some investigations into this, because what has bothered me is, given that I also have family all over the world, where the kids tell me, we did a swap meet for, Palestine, and we did, our entire football club is collecting all year. So I keep hearing this. Restaurants in Europe, all the Indian restaurants, Muslim Indian restaurants, have now an option on the bill that you can. I'm like, where's this money going? Because for 12 months, big organizations have made billions, and it's really billions, they have collected. And I'm not saying that they are dodgy, but there's been so much money coming in because people have been given because of the images. That money is not getting through. We all kind of understand why, right? I mean, there's a certain process that has to be followed, and obviously that process has not been allowed. So there's no money directly going that usually after big bombing goes, that goes to them to rebuild, to kind of get the thing up. So what we have seen in the past, when a bombing has happened, the money comes in and Gaza rebuilds, has not happened. The economy is destroyed. Nobody has a job anymore. Nobody goes to work anymore at all. There's no money coming in, and there's also no aid coming in. The aid that does come in, and this is now what I've just learned a couple of days ago, is that Israel has hired, I'm not clear on who it is. I think they're actually Palestinian, right? But they have hired a group to basically guard the aid trucks. And unfortunately, what has happened, very few aid trucks come in, and then the people who are in charge of guarding the aid trucks actually sell the food. So that's why, Palestinians suddenly need 40 shekel for a bag of flowers. So now that I've dug into this a little bit more, because again, it was odd. It was so fucking odd that, you have a people who hate begging suddenly over and over and over again, and it won't stop. And I'm like, this is not even they can't even bribe Egypt anymore to get out. So it's not even about that anymore. So I was really curious, what is actually going on? Because if you send somebody $100, normally if you send somebody in Lebanon during their crisis, if you send them, it usually lasts a few months, but this has never lasted. So now I've understood what is going on. It basically costs them 3 times as much to survive than usual, because there is this, what they describe as mafia. And again, they can only say limited stuff because they know everybody has access to this conversation, but they are paying for the aid that comes in. They have to pay for every piece of food they get, and they pay high money. And they have to beg for survival. And so I think I want people to be aware of it. I am not a non-profit organizer, so I have no idea what to actually do. I know these big organizations like Doctors Without Borders and, every organization we know that usually they're all sitting on a lot of money. And I'm not saying that they're purposely holding it, but there's a huge disconnect of money that has been given, from people who feel bad, who really want to help. They can't get the money through. Aid is not coming through. This mini mafia is selling the aid, the little aid that comes through, and we have people begging. And the odd part about this is that us giving money to some fundraiser in the UK or Germany and them sending it directly to somebody in Palestine is actually working. That's actually how they survive. So the majority of Palestinians in Gaza are actually surviving because of people on Twitter or TikTok. So I need to start putting that out there because
we got it. Yeah,
we all broke, and there's not much you can get out of the people who are speaking out for Palestine because we don't never get work.
Right.
And also, if there is somebody listening who actually knows how to get around this, hopefully somebody can start figuring it out.
And so who are you, if you don't mind sharing, who are you voting for?
I'm voting for Jill Stein.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm in New York. There's nothing to me.
Yeah, same in California.
I don't get how,
I think that the gesture is, again, I think people need to really understand that rather than thinking about the names right now and the situation right now, think about the fact that you're voting for somebody you've watched commit suicide, And yes, if Trump will be worse, and then we'll endure it together. And we'll fight that fucker too. But you still can't reward genocide.
Lexi Alexander, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye.